and we have discussed about what operation management is, how it is critical function for any organization and responsible for planning, coordinating, controlling the resource needed to produce the goods and services. Later we discuss about operations management, like how operations management is significance in a business. Like we discuss about operation management is basically concerned with ensuring that company's operations are efficient and effective, and they meet the customer demands uh, and customer changing need. It is also responsible for ensuring that company's product and services are delivered on time and within budget. Operations management, as we know, is a vital in ensuring that what company's operations are aligned with its strategic objective. And later we discuss about what are the objective of operations management. First was product selection and design. So basically, product selection and design is a key operations management function, determining which product or services that company will offer the customers. Right. Let's start with today's topic, that is product and design, product and service design. So early stage development and design process is easily one of the most important period of time for any business, whether you are product or services based, right? After all, decision that you make at this stage will have a huge impact on everything from usability to accessibility to desirability, and last is feasibility. कितना आपका product feasible है. So both the service and the design, product design as processes feed into how happy your customer or user will be, and as such how successful your business in long term will be. So it is very easy to fall into thinking that two processes are exact same. However, it is not. ये दोनों अलग अलग प्रोसेस होते हैं. प्रोडक्ट आप हाथ में ले सकते हो, टेंजेबल होता है. सर्विस आप सिर्फ एक्सपीरियंस कर सकते हो, यू कैन नॉट टच इट, राइट? So how can a product design and service design be really that different? Well, the truth is there certainly are some similarities in the ways they are often conducted, but there are also huge differences that you need to be aware so that you can create the best product or services possible. Let's start with the very basic. So the first point is, what is actually product? So we all know it. A product is tangible, मतलब हम उसको छू सकते हैं. That's to say the customer can buy the product and we can hold them or store it somewhere in the real world. Most often the value is generated and derived from the product by the user. So the user already know what they want from the product, hence they buy it. From the post and to pants to t-shirt, video game, etc. Now coming to what services, a service is something that someone experiences and it's not necessarily owned. For example, healthcare services or streaming platform like Netflix, Spotify, etc. So these are services. So in each of these cases, the services is not tangible and only has a value when it performs the user. So with this in mind, it is true to say that will services are by definition people centered, the product aren't. So as you can imagine, the difference in this definition means that there are also contrast in the process of designing process and designing services. So what are the key principle of the product design? As smashing magazine, product design is the process of identifying a market opportunity, clearly defining the problem, developing a proper solution for the problem, and validating solution with real users. As such, design thinking is a brilliant foundation for the product design process since it is so focused on finding actionable and practical solution to the problem of users. So we have spoken a lot about the design thinking on our previous class, but in fact we covered the topic just like we can explain how it is different from human-centered design. The design thinking is a problem-solving process. First, you begin the understanding and scoping a clear problem. Then you focus on how uh, you can solve it on the ways that it is best illustrated it through a design concept double diamond. राइट. तो सबसे पहले आप प्रॉब्लम को अपनी डिफाइन करेंगे कि प्रॉब्लम, सबसे पहले आप प्रॉब्लम को आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे कि आपका इनसाइड क्या है प्रॉब्लम का, प्रॉब्लम का रीज़न क्या है, प्रॉब्लम खुद क्या है. फिर आपको प्रॉब्लम को डिफाइन करेंगे, द एरिया टू फोकस अपॉन इन प्रॉब्लम, एंड देन सबसे पहले यू विल डेवलप the potential solution and deliver the solution that works. मतलब सबसे पहले आप solution निकालेंगे फिर आप उसको deliver करेंगे. So this is such a valuable process of a product designer as it focuses on product development from one end to other, not just the design itself. This helps designer to define exactly what they are trying to achieve in terms of their users' needs, thereby creating something with a much greater chance of success. More than simply the look and feel of a product is considered. Again, for more practical step, how to understand your user through design thinking, right? And so understanding the design thinking framework, this then feeds the product into development process. Each project will look slightly different, but here is how the general flow look like. First, they will define the product vision, then they will do the product research, then they will do the user analysis, ideation, design and testing. Last सबसे होगा हमारा जो भी रिजल्ट है उसका हम एनालाइज करेंगे कि हमने जो भी प्रॉब्लम को सोल्यूशन निकाला है कि वो वर्किंग है या कुछ इसमें प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं आ रही है, राइट. एंड उसके बाद हम लोग मार्केट में सर्वे करेंगे कि कुछ और प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं है और जो सोल्यूशन था वो प्रॉपरली काम कर रहा है कि नहीं. So talking about the last topic, that is what are the key principles to the service design. So according to the service design network, it is the activity of planning and organizing people, infrastructure, communication and material component of service in order to improve its quality and their interaction between service provider and customers. The purpose of service design methodologies is to design according to the need of the customer or participants so that the service is user friendly, competitive, and relevant to the customer. To put it simply, then, the process has focused on ensuring that a service is meeting the needs of all users as efficiently as possible as every single step. In terms of implementing service design, according to Marx, Stinson, and Jacobs, it has five basic principles. User centered through understanding the user by doing qualitative research, co creative by involving all relevant stakeholders in the design process, sequencing by partitioning a complex services into separate process, evidencing by visualizing service experience and making them tangible, and holistic by considering touch points in the network of interactions and users. Right. One of the key aspects of the effective service design is research qualitative. So in research qualitative research we discuss about the quality of any product or services. इसमें हम क्वांटिटी नहीं क्वालिटी पे फोकस करते हैं. Including observation and interviews are conducted, allowing the designer to foresee a variety of situations in which the user may interact with the service. So these insights are then used to create persona, customer journey maps, value network maps, and stakeholder maps. So armed with all the co-creation sessions are put in a place to generate service prototypes, which are then developed iteratively. So at this point, the designer is able to create the best possible experiences for all the actions on the services. Sorry. So this is the introduction to product and service design. So what we have understood from this slide is, while service designs is focused on the organization and planning of people and communication in order to create optimal service quality, product design is primarily concerned with the solving real problem through functionality, not just what a product looks and feel like. This is thanks to intangibility of services versus the physical nature of the products. However, at the heart of both product and service design is the desire to create best possible user experiences. They are each user centered and keep customer at the heart of their decision making. So, through focusing on the process of product design or service design, businesses are able to effectively generate more sale, large amount of customer loyalty, and customer growth more widely. Right now, next is characteristics of any services. Some of the important characteristics of services are as follow. First is perishability, next is fluctuating demand, next then intangibility, inseparability, heterogeneity, pricing of services, service quality is not statistically nature. तो अभी हम इसको थोड़ा डिटेल में डिस्कस करते हैं. पेरिशेबिलिटी का मतलब होता है सर्विस इज हाईली पेरिशेबल एट द टाइम ऑफ एलिमेंट हैज ग्रेट सिग्निफिकेंस इन सर्विस मार्क. सो मतलब अगर आपकी कोई भी सर्विस है, अगर आपने वो ना ज़्यादा टाइम तक यूज़ नहीं करी तो वो फिर चली जाती है. लेकिन प्रोडक्ट आपका कुछ होता है, अगर आप उसको रख देते हो कुछ टाइम बाद यूज़ करोगे तो वो सेम होता है. बट सर्विसेज आपको अगर ज़्यादा टाइम तक यूज़ नहीं करेंगे तो वो लॉस, तो वो आप स्टोर नहीं कर सकते सर्विस. पेरिशेबिलिटी का मतलब ये होता है कि ना एक्सपायर हो जाती है या फिर ऑफ नो यूज़ रह जाती हैं. Next is fluctuating demand. So services demands have high degree of fluctuation. The change in demand can be seasonal or by weekdays or even hours. Most of the services have peak demand in peak hours, normal demand and low demand of off period hours. Talking about intangibility, so unlike product, services cannot be touched or sensed, tasted or felt before they are availed. So a service is an abstract phenomena. मतलब जैसे मैंने आपको पहले भी एक्सप्लेन किया कि आप सर्विस को टच नहीं कर सकते हो, आप उसको हाथ में नहीं ले सकते, आप उसको सिर्फ एक्सपीरियंस कर सकते हो. तो दैट इज नॉट टेंजेबल. टेंजेबल वो होता है जो प्रोडक्ट जिसको आप टच कर सकते हो, हाथ में ले सकते हो, रख सकते हो. फिर आता है इंसेपरेबिलिटी. तो पर्सनल सर्विसेज कैन नॉट बी सेपरेटेड फ्रॉम इंडिविजुअल and some personalized services are created and consumed simultaneously. For example, haircut is not possible without the presence of individual. Doctor can only treat when this patient is present. Next आ गया heterogeneity. The feature of services by a provider cannot be uniform or standardized. Doctor can change much higher fee to a rich client and take much low from a poor patient. तो मतलब इसमें आपके फीचर बहुत जल्दी चेंज होते रहते हैं. और आप डॉक्टर चेंज कर सकता है हाई फी टू अ रिच क्लाइंट एंड देन मतलब डॉक्टर की फी इजीली चेंज हो जाती है, राइट. फिर आता है प्राइसिंग ऑफ सर्विसेज. तो प्राइसिंग डिसीजन अबाउट सर्विसेज आर इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय पेरिशेबिलिटी, फ्लक्चुएशन इन डिमांड एंड इनसेपरेबिलिटी. सो क्वालिटी ऑफ सर्विसेज कैन नॉट बी केयरफुली स्टैंडर्डाइज. Pricing of services is dependent on the demand and the competition when variable pricing may be used. The service quality is not statistically measured, so it is defined in the form of reliability, responsiveness, empathy, and assurance of all the which are in control of employees' direction interacting with the customer. For services, customer satisfaction and delight are very important. The employee directly interacting with customer are to be very special and important. People include internal marketing, external marketing, and interactive marketing. ठीक है, तो नेक्स्ट आता है वन सेकेंड क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ सर्विसेज. सो क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ सर्विसेज में सबसे पहला आएगा economy is primarily considered a service economy, but do you know what it is? Like it outlines the percentage each industry contributed to the GDP in 2020. So while industries are the largest contributor to GDP, service industry, when you have a service industry, they make up whopping of 60% of GDP versus only 10% of manufacturing. In a nutshell, services are no no physical intangible economic activities. On the other hand, physical goods are things which can be touched, handled, and commonly called intangible. So that's because education is considered as a private service sector, and service sectors also include things like banking, medical treatment, transportation, insurance. Give me one second. Right. So Based on the fact of the majority of contributor to GDP in the United States are services, and most of them are half of the country workforce is employed in producing intangible. सो जो हमारी यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स है उसमें जीडीपी में सबसे ज़्यादा कंट्रीब्यूशन उसका प्रोडक्ट नहीं करता है, उसमें सर्विसेज करती है, बिकॉज उनकी हाफ ऑफ द जो एम्प्लॉय हैं, हाफ ऑफ द कंट्री का जो वर्क फोर्स है वो ऐसी चीज़ें प्रोड्यूस करता है जो सर्विसेज होती हैं. So now it is critical to understand that important sectors from the marketing perspective, considering the challenge to market when selling services as opposed to product. So consumer can't touch or see the services before they purchase, so it is difficult to examine or evaluate the benefit. जैसे कोई भी आप सर्विस होती है वो आप टच नहीं कर सकते, और तो आप उसको इजीली इवेल्युएट नहीं कर सकते. लेकिन ये क्या थिंग अबाउट यू कांट टेक अ सर्विस ऑफ अ टेस्ट ड्राइव दैट यू माइट इफ यू वर बाइंग अ न्यू कार, राइट. येट ये मतलब बट वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होती है ऑर्गेनाइजेशन दैट प्रोवाइड सर्विस. अब जैसे कोई भी आप गाड़ी लेने जाते हो तो आप गाड़ी को ट्राई करते हो तो वो सर्विस हुई, बिकॉज गाड़ी आपने खरीदी नहीं है. अगर आपने खरीद लिया तो आपने प्रोडक्ट लिया, तो वो सर्विस बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, राइट. तो अब करते हैं क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ सर्विसेज. So there are six different classification of services. First is people based services. तो इसमें इंसान एक ह्यूमन बीइंग या पीपल आप इसको बोलते हैं वो सर्विस देता है. So people based services are when people primarily deliver the services rather than equipment or machinery. It is the individual delivering the services and the knowledge and the skill they possess that add value and allow the services to be performed. People based services can be broken down into various subcategories. तो इसमें जैसे मैंने बताया कि पीपल इंसान सर्विस देता है. जैसे आप आप हेयर स्टाइलिस्ट के बाद बाल कटाने जाते हो या फिर प्लम्बर से आप हेल्प लेते हो, तो ये सब में इंसान आपको सर्विस देता है. वो आपको प्रोडक्ट नहीं दे रहे हैं, आपको सर्विस दे रहे हैं, राइट. तो सर्विसेज इसका डिफरेंट डिफरेंट टाइप्स का सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड बाय अनस्किल्ड लेबर. जैसे पार्किंग, आप एयरपोर्ट की पार्किंग में जाते हो या किसी मॉल की पार्किंग में जाते हो, वहाँ लोग खड़े रहते हैं, राइट. तो वो आपको रास्ता बताते हैं, या बेबी सीटर होता है, कोई आपके घर में बेबी को आपका हेल्प करता है, बेबी को पालने में, बेबी सिट. तो दीज आर अनस्किल्ड लेबर्स, तो ये भी सर्विस प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं. फिर आता है सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड बाय द स्किल्ड लेबर. तो इसमें क्या आता है, केटरर्स, शादी में जो केटरिंग का काम करते हैं, प्लम्बर्स जो आपके घर में आके, इलेक्ट्रीशियंस या फिर हेयर स्टाइलिस्ट. तो ये स्किल्ड लेबर होती है, बिकॉज इसके लिए आपको काम सीखना पड़ता है. तीसरा आता है सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड बाय प्रोफेशनल. अब जैसे डॉक्टर आ गया, कॉलेज प्रोफेसर आ गए, अकाउंटेंट्स आ गए, तो ये तो प्रोफेशनल हो गए, मतलब ये स्किल्ड भी नहीं है, स्किल्ड से भी ऊपर है. सो ये भी एक पीपल बेस्ड सर्विस के तीन टाइप्स होते हैं. सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड बाय अनस्किल्ड लेबर, सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड बाय स्किल्ड लेबर एंड सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड बाय प्रोफेशनल्स, राइट. फिर आता है आपका इक्विपमेंट बेस्ड सर्विसेज. इक्विपमेंट जैसे नाम से पता लग रहा है, इसमें इक्विपमेंट या कोई मशीनरी या फिर वो सर्विस देते हैं. तो इक्विपमेंट बेस्ड सर्विसेज फर्म्स यूटिलाइज इक्विपमेंट, मशीनरी एंड अदर फॉर्म्स ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी टू परफॉर्म सर्विसेज टास्क. सिमिलर टू पीपल बेस्ड सर्विसेज, इक्विपमेंट बेस्ड सर्विसेज कैन बी फर्दर ब्रोकन डाउन. इसमें क्या है, ऑटोमेटेड सर्विसेज हो गई. अब जैसे पीपल बेस्ड सर्विस 3 टाइप की थी, ऐसी इक्विपमेंट बेस्ड सर्विसेज भी 3 टाइप की है. सो ऑटोमेटेड सर्विसेज होगी. अब जैसे आप कहीं कहीं कार वॉशिंग कराने जाते हैं, तो वहाँ पे ना कोई इंसान होता, आपकी कार अंदर जाती है, वो ऑटोमेटिकली साइड से प्रेशर आता है, वॉश होकर निकल जाती है, तो वो ऑटोमेटिक सर्विसेज होगी. इसमें कोई इंसान वहाँ नहीं खड़ा है, लेकिन स्टिल गेटिंग द सर्विसेज. फिर आता है इक्विपमेंट बेस्ड सर्विसेज ऑपरेटेड बाय अनस्किल्ड. इसमें भी अनस्किल्ड है, जैसे ड्राई क्लीनिंग का कोई इक्विपमेंट आपको, जैसे हेल्पर होते हैं जो आप कभी अपने कपड़े ड्राई क्लीन कराते हो, तो वो उसमें भी लेकिन मशीन आपको दे रही है सर्विस, लेकिन वो इसमें इंसान के इन्वॉल्वमेंट है, राइट. और फिर आता है एक स्किल्ड ऑपरेटर. जैसे एक्सरे कराने जाते हैं आप, अल्ट्रासाउंड कराने जाते हैं, होता तो ये मशीन इक्विपमेंट के थ्रू है, लेकिन इसमें एक इंसान की, प्रोफेशनल इंसान की जरूरत है, जो कि स्किल्ड ऑपरेटर होता है. सो देयर इज अनदर वे टू लुक द कैटेगराइज सर्विसेज अकॉर्डिंग टू वेल नोन ऑथर एंड प्रोफेसर क्रिस्टोफर. सो ही प्रपोज्ड 4 ब्रॉड कैटेगरीज ऑफ सर्विसेज. फर्स्ट इज पीपल प्रोसेसिंग, जो अभी हम डिटेल में डिस्कस करेंगे. पोजीशन प्रोसेसिंग, mental stimulus processing, information processing. So in the categories are defined as a two-dimensional matrix, wherein one of the dimension is that direct recipient of the services, and other is nature of the service act. So let's look at each category in more detail. The first two categories are people processing and possession processing involve tangible actions directly towards a person's physical body or property, whereas mental stimulus and processing and information processes involve intangible actions directed towards a person's mind or information. So we'll expand this in the following section. सबसे पहले आता है people processing. तो in people processing services, the customer is a direct recipient of the services and the products are when consumption of the services are stimulus. So consider example of services where you must be present in the service facility in order to interact with the service provider and receive the services such as barber shops or hair salons, physical therapist, offices. फिर आता है possession processing. So different between people processing and possession processing is that a service is directed towards the customer physical possession. In other words, production and the consumptions are separate. You are only involved in dropping off the item that requires services or repair and expanding the problem. For example, once you have taken the from your car in the form of oil change, you can do not need to be physically at the location of the oil change to occur. So similarly, once you have dropped your clothes of a dry cleaner, you don't need to be physically present while cleaning process is performed. तो इसमें क्या होता है पोजीशन प्रोसेसिंग में कि इसमें आपको ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आप वहाँ पे खड़े रहो जब आपका पूरा काम चल रहा है, सर्विस आपको मिल रही है। आप ड्राई क्लीनर के यहाँ कपड़े देके जाते हो, फिर आप पिक करने आते हो, तो इस बीच में ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आपको वहाँ खड़ा रहना है, राइट? फिर आता है मेंटल स्टिमुलस प्रोसेसिंग इट इज इन द सिंपलेस्ट एक्सप्लेनेशन मेंटल स्टिमुलस प्रोसेसिंग इज व्हेन द सर्विसेज इंटरैक्ट विद योर माइंड rather than your body. Time and mental efforts are required for the customers to receive this type of services. What you are doing right now, reading the textbook, is a prime example of mental stimulus processing. Other example include psychotherapy or counseling services. So the key takeaway here is the service rendered in this category are intangible. Last are the information processing. So information processing is the most intangible forms of services, although it can be transferred into tangible services like the reports, book letter होता है या फिर डीवीडी होती है, तो ये tangible हाथ में ले सकते हो. तो some of the example of information processing services are things like meeting with your financial advisor regarding investment advice, legal services, etc. फिर ये आ गया आपका क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ सर्विसेज. अब उसके बाद आते हैं characteristics of services in detail. So services industry contribute to the major percent of the US GDP. It is important to understand that this shift from manufacturing sector to the service sector is not limited to United States. Increasingly, the world economy is being characterized by as a service economy. So, looking at the economic history, we can see a natural evolution in the developing country from the agricultural industry to the service sector as the mainstay of the economy. That's why it is critical for marketers to understand the characteristics of services. As we pointed out above, some services come from a physical product, such as getting a haircut or having your income tax return prepared by a professional, but other services are completely intangible. When you rent a hotel room, travel on an airplane, visit your doctor, attend a professional sporting event, or get advice from a lawyer or an accountant, you are buying a service. So the marketer needs to consider the characteristics of services in order to get the right marketing messages to the right target market. फिर एक आता है सर्विस इंटेंजिबिलिटीज में सबसे पहले. सो बाय देयर वेरी नेचर सर्विस आर इंटेंजिबल. दिस मीन्स दे कांट बी सीन, tested, felt, smelled, or heard before they are purchased. So consider the last time you purchased an automobile insurance from your car, right? So other than a physical policy of the company send you, what you are paid is completely intangible. It is the company's promise to pay claims against the policy. Intangible services have a number of implications in marketing. The very fact that there is nothing to touch, hear, smell, and so typically increases the level of uncertainty that a consumer faces when choosing between services offered by your organization or those of competitors. Intangible services can be seldom be tried out, inspected, or even given a test drive by a customer. The customer have to rely on the word of the marketers in order to assess what they are actually going to get in return of what they have paid. In effect, they are buying a promise. So savvy market reduces the uncertainty by creating physical evidences that allows the consumer to picture the services before it is purchased. So for example, a hair salon may have an imager software that predicts how you would look with a different hairstyle. Companies like Zenny, so उसमें क्या होता है, उसमें सॉफ्टवेयर होता है जिसमें आपको पहले आपके फेस के बेसिस पे बता देंगे कि आपका हेयर कट होने के बाद कैसा लगेगा. फिर आता है सेकंड, सर्विस इंसेपरेबिलिटी. So in the order of the production and consumption between a physical and product at a service differs. Think about a box of a cookie, physical good product that the cookie were produced, stored, and sold are finally consumed. That's not the way it works. Like the goods and services are sold, but they are produced and consumed simultaneously. They can't be separated from the service providers, whether they are people, equipment. For example, try to get money out of your bank on a weekend evening without an ATM, or try to get a haircut without a physical presence of your stylist. That's the concept of service inseparability, right? मतलब अगर आपको हेयर कट कराना है तो आपको एक हेयर स्टाइलिस्ट होना मैंडेटरी है, राइट? तो इस दोनों चीज़ें सेपरेट नहीं हो सकती हैं. So that's a concept of service, inseparability. You can't separate the delivery of the services with the presence of customer. In other words, the services provider is physically connected to the service and is evaluated on the basis of their communication skill, language, demeanor, and personal hygiene and clothing. So the impact of the marketers in these services in which the service providers and customer must both present is how the service providers, sometimes called the frontline employee, conduct themselves in the presence of the customer because it may determine the likelihood of a repeat business. There are also other marketing implications with this concept, such as customer cooperation and participation, not to mention that influence from customer who may present. Service variability. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and had stellar customer services? You were seated promptly by a chair. मतलब आप कहीं होटल में जाते हो, आपको एक बहुत अच्छे से कोई ग्रीट करता है और कोई बहुत आएगा, आपका ग्लास फिल करेगा और आपको ग्रीट करेगा हंस के. द स्टाफ वाज अटेंटिव बट नॉट टू अ पॉइंट ऑफ बीइंग अननोइंग. कहीं कहीं स्टाफ आप जाते हो एक होटल में, वहाँ पे डर्टी डिशेस पड़ी होती है, कोई आकर आपसे बात नहीं करता, ना आपको कोई ग्रीट करता है. तो अब सर्विसेज हर जगह की अलग होती है, लेकिन दोनों इंडस्ट्री सेम है, होटल इंडस्ट्री से है, इन सर्विसेज वेरिएबल है, करेक्ट? So perhaps what you have experienced is what known as service variability. The quality of service depends on who provides what is provided and how it is provided. For example, Delta Airlines prides itself on improving people's lives and exceeding customer expectation. However, because services are provided by humans who have human experiences, where they may not have feeling well or they are having a bad day, services may be variable between employer. So on Delta, employer may be cheerful, efficient. So this is a challenge to marketers because products generally have a little variability. Each unit is built to certain specification. So for example, अगर आपने iPad Pro buy किया है and your classmate purchases the same model, it is likely that two iPads will be virtually देखने में एक से होंगे, right? The case color may be different, या otherwise they are same. सो दैट्स नॉट अ केस विद अ सर्विस. सर्विस में अगर आपने सेम जगह से भी चीज़ करी है, लेकिन सर्विस थोड़ी सी डिफरेंट हो जाती है बिकॉज प्रोडक्ट तो हमेशा सेम ही होता है, अगर वो सेम मॉडल है या सेम एकदम सेम है तो. बट सर्विस बेस्ड कंपनीज नीड टू रिलाई ऑन स्टैंडर्डाइजिंग प्रोसेस टू एक्सटेंड पॉसिबल फ्रीक्वेंट ऑडिट्स, राइट? फिर लास्ट आता है सर्विस पेरिशेबिलिटी. Unlike most goods, services can't be produced and stored for later use or sale. Services are in effect of performance and service provider. That's the concept of service perishability. They are like अगर आपने किसी वजह से अपना कॉन्सर्ट आपने बुक किया है, आपने कोई इवेंट बुक किया है और किसी ट्रैफिक की वजह से आपने वो सर्विस मिस कर दी, तो वो दोबारा नहीं हो सकता, राइट? बट अगर आपने जैसे कोई आप फ़ोन खरीदने जा रहे हो और वो सर्विस की वजह से आप शॉप बंद हो गई है, वो नहीं मिला, तो लेकिन आपको कल को फिर मिल जाएगा. पेरिशेबिलिटी होती है कि सर्विसेज कुछ टाइम तक अगर आप एंजॉय नहीं करो तो वो एक्सपायर हो जाती हैं, बिकॉज आप उसको ज़्यादा लंबे टाइम के लिए स्टोर नहीं कर सकते। जो है प्रोडक्ट आप स्टोर कर सकते हो, पेरिशेबिलिटी का ये मीनिंग है। नेक्स्ट है टॉपिक फैक्टर्स अफेक्टिंग service operations. So, designing a service process involve a careful consideration of factors related to services. Various issues such as service, location, facility design, layout, or effective workflow procedure, and job identification for service provider, customer involvement, equipment, and selection, etc. Should be decided while designing service process. So apart from these, the following factors are should also be considered, like जैसे आप स्क्रीन पर ही देख सकते हो, सर्विस खुद, customer participation in the process, location of the service delivery, level of customer contact, degree of standardization, complexity of services. पहला आता है service itself. The most important and actual process of service delivery is being recognized of late. Right. So by employing some principle, the services and the delivery process can be designed, implemented, and monitored. The service itself is dependent upon that process. Even intangible services such as legal restriction, equipment-based services, ATM हो गया, vending machine हो गई, right, are dependent upon their processes. While designing the services, it is necessary for the service provider to carefully understand the process on which the service is dependent. Right. So the customer participation in the process. The presence of customer is must when some services are being performed. The consumer is a part of the production process, and there is a close interaction between service provider and consumer. For example, service in a self-service restaurant, hairdressing, salon, beauty parlor, etc. necessities the participation on the customer in the production process. Sometimes the customer, instead of being a passive, acts as a productive labor if needed. Customer participation enhance the degree of customization. So, for example, education service rendered by a college would be dependent on the quality of student participation in programs offered by college, though customer participation, the self-provided identifies the impact of the receiver of the benefit on the services. फिर ये आपका तीसरा आता है लोकेशन ऑफ सर्विस डिलीवरी। ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है बिकॉज द इश्यूज रिलेटेड टू द एक्सेसिबिलिटी एंड द अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ a services are crucial. Priority must be given in decision about the location, premise, and service distribution. Provision of the services may take place at the service provider's premise or the customer's home. For example, an air conditioner or plumbing service should be provided at customer's home, while dry cleaning or clothing is carried out at the service provider outlet. The public services such as telephone, banking, insurance should be easily accessible to customer. Generally, the service provider should choose to provide a location to convenient to customer. Next is level of customer contact. The physical presence of the customer in the system is called customer contact. The level of customer contact can be calculated from the amount of time a customer spend in the system compared to total system. The level of contact with the customer largely depend upon the service of the type of service received. For this point of view, a service may be high contact services or a low contact services. When performance of service is fully based on the equipment, the level of contact between the customer and service provider is nil. So in this case of a professional and a medical services, the level of contact is very high. The services system should be planned according to the high contact and low contact operation in order to achieve overall service quality. सेकंड लास्ट आता है ये फिफ्थ डिग्री ऑफ स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन, इसको हमने पहले भी डिस्कस किया था. The services may be standardized services or a customized services. In case of standardized services, the services are delivered in a very standard format. The standardized services generally designed for high volumes with a focus services, and फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आप जैसे प्री रिकॉर्डेड मैसेज, अगर आपको कोई जैसे कोरोना के टाइम पे था या अभी भी हम लोग देखते हैं प्री रिकॉर्ड मैसेज आता है, हम लोग कॉल करते हैं कि फेक कॉल्स या फ्रॉड कॉल से बचने के लिए, ये भी एक सर्विस है गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से। तो ये स्टैंडर्डाइज है, ये हर किसी के लिए सेम है। So the task involved in standardization services required a workforce with a relatively low levels of technical skill. The service providers deviate from the standard to meet the need of the customer. This is called divergence. Customized services involve high divergence where flexibility and the judgment are called for on the part of the service providers. He interact with the customer in order to identify the need of the latter. The interaction between the service provider and the customer may be in terms of resource facility, such as expertise, skill, attentions that reduce personal space, cleanliness, etc. In other words, interaction is more between the customer and the employee of the service providers. Provision of the customized services require high level of technical skill. Generally, customized services are unprogrammed and are not well defined before they are provided. For example, counseling of students, house decoration, tailoring, etc. Last आता है complexity of the services. So complexity refers to the amount of steps involved in delivering a services to customers. So the degree of complexity can be measured on the basis of number of activities which contribute towards the service delivery. Some services are high in complexity as well as in the divergence. For example, doctor service is highly complex and highly divergent. Each हर patient की case history अलग होती है, तो case ही अलग होता है. Yet they are always diagnosed correctly. But catering services are high in complexity, right? ये हमारा फैक्टर्स हो गया अफेक्टिंग. So the next topic we'll be taking is service capacity planning. Actually, uh, let's revisit. Uh, and let's do the service capacity planning. Yeah, sorry. So the service industry, as we have discussed, work hard to satisfy customer. Whether your organization is engineering or consulting from maximizing customer experiences requires intrinsic planning and organization tool. Capacity planning creates real value in ensuring businesses can meet customer demands and fulfill it by providing a proper efficient product. So what is the capacity planning? Capacity is the ability to receive, contain, deliver its product. Capacity planning is the advanced development of a method or approach to ensure an organization can receive, contain, or deliver its products. Businesses cannot afford to guess when it comes to volumes or types of service skilled or people they provide, project they manage, or organization they serve. So planning mistakes are costly, which is why capacity planning must be considered input, requirement, conservation process, and the output. So सबसे पहले क्या है, successfully plan your capacity. For service organization, capacity has a measurable impact since the process also determines the number of services or people you can provide. Capacity planning is more than just a tool for manufacture. It can distinguish your services organization above your competition. To remain competitive, grow, and ensure an overarching positive brand customer experiences, your businesses needs to know how much of a services or how many people can be provided over a specific period based on the current projects. Since services cannot be inventoried to key to a successful capacity strategy to match long-term supply with predicted long-term demand goals. Capacity planning can align price or rates to avoid over or undercharging your customer. So key consideration for successful capacity planning: allocate resources for specific activities, price services contracts for maximum margin, right? Customer value, market acceptance. acquire, train, and terminate staff efficiently, accurately forecast demand and produce or deliver services. सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है कि चलो we'll discuss one by one in detail. First आता है meet your budget. When services organize use a proven capacity planning process to meet demand with the least waste or increase their utilization rates, they are on the path to improve customer experiences. Often organization assumes or guess that they meet the demand of instead of having a real plan in place on based on the projected sales on the demand forecast. कैपेसिटी प्लानिंग एलिमिनेट्स द नीड टू गेस. सो कैपेसिटी प्लानिंग में जो होता है वो इंक्लूड कैटेगरीज दैट हेल्प्स बिजनेसेस बेस्ड ऑन द टाइमलाइन they have established. Short term capacity, usually this is daily or weekly period, but it can include quarterly period. Short term capacity does not look at the trend and cycle but consider customer demand and seasonal variation. Medium term capacity, this is 1 to 3 period. Medium term capacity combines seasonal variation with historical trends to forecast demand. So long term capacity. So this is the maximum period which vary is depending on the type of services. Long term capacity require forecasting. The forecasts are converted into established capacity requirement. So अब जैसे हम इसमें कैसे करेंगे how service organization benefit you know the planning process. So capacity planning जो होती है वो help करती है businesses को budgeting and scaling के so that they can identify optimal level of operations. पहला आता है budgeting benefit. The capacity planning helps determine how services are offered and uh, the appropriate time frames and staff required to meet current demand and cover all operational costs. This is the important consideration when establishing yearly budgets to effectively allocate money for expenses. The use of demand planning software and demand forecasting software helps with developing financial projection. दूसरा आता है स्केलिंग बेनिफिट. तो स्केलिंग बेनिफिट जैसे नाम से पता लगता है कि इफ योर बिजनेस इज कंसिडरिंग टेकिंग वन मोर स्टाफ टू हेल्प मीट योर anticipated demand based on your capacity plan, you might find that aside from increase employee by 10%, you need specific skills or a larger location for staff and new equipment requirement. फिर दूसरा आता है फैक्टर अफेक्टिव कैपेसिटी प्लानिंग. कैपेसिटी प्लानिंग कैन एक्सेलरेट योर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इनोवेशन while decreasing risk to help them meet the demand. Assess the service demand factor that can affect capacity, including process, staffing, एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स. तो प्रोसेस में क्या आएगा स्किल क्वांटिटी क्वालिटी कैपेबिलिटीज. स्टाफिंग में आएगा जॉब डिस्क्रिप्शन टोटल लेबर ट्रेनिंग कंपनसेशन एंड टर्नओवर रेट्स. एक्सटर्नल में आएगा यूनियन गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसीज एंड द बजट साइकिल. So when considered demand, service organization benefits from the use of predictive demand planning software. These modern planning solution matches the need of the business and offer what if scenario to give insight into the outcome and disruption they may occur. Demand forecast helps services organization with their financial plans and capacity to drive procurement used to deliver the services. Capacity planning user demand forecast to set up price and contract terms that assist with their services time, location and timelines. When these are aligned, the services organization can determine the future profitability of services contract. So in order to conclude, service organization have several areas to consider as they grow and scale. Whether it is adding staff or changing pricing, capacity planning can be determined how much capital is required as capacity planning look at the data and operations to make their future decision. Use predictive demand planning software to run accurate what if scenarios. And capacity planning is an integral aspect of businesses. It helps structural growth to ensure the organization maintain a competitive edge in a constantly changing marketplace to meet demand. लास्ट आता है हमारा सर्विक्वल मॉडल ऑफ मेजरिंग सर्विस क्वालिटी. इसमें हम सर्विस की क्वालिटी उसको मेजर करने के लिए एक मॉडल है जिसको हम बोलते हैं सर्विक्वल मॉडल. So quality is the key to achieve customer satisfaction. Quality is a dynamic state associated with product, services, people in environment that meets or exceeds the expectation. Quality is also rapidly embracing the nature of or degree of impact an organization has its stakeholders, environmental or society. In the service industry, definition of a service quality tend to focus on meeting customer needs and requirement and how well the service delivered meets their expectation. In order to deliver and maintain service quality, an organization must first identify what is that constitute to quality to those whom it serves. The key to ensuring good services quality is meeting or exceeding what customer expects from the services. It was clear to us that judgmental of low and high quality of the service depends on how customer expect from services. It is also clear to us that judgment of high and low service quality depends on how customer perceive the actual services performance in the context of what they expected. Service quality as perceived by customer can be defined as the extent of the discrepancy between customer expectation or the desire and the perception. Service delivery is concerned with where, when, and how the services product is delivered to customer. Moreover, service quality is very perceived judgmental, resulting from evaluating process where customer compare their expectation with the service they have received. While service quality is an overall attitude towards a service firm, customer satisfaction is specific to an individual service encounter. Therefore, it is very difficult to come to a census as to a definition of a service quality. We can, however, conclude that a service quality is about providing something intangible, जिसको हम touch नहीं कर सकते, जिसको mold नहीं कर सकते, in a way that pleases the customer and consumer that prefers giving some value to the customer. दूसरा, अगर हम इसको सर्विकल मॉडल को डिटेल में डिस्कस करें, cervical model or cervical instrument is developed by a scientist called Parasamon in 1991 have proved popular being used many study of a service quality. This is because it has a genuine application and is a practical approach to any area. Number of researchers have applied the cervical model to measure specific quantity in the hospitality industry, which modified construct to suit specific hospital situation. Parasaman 1985 developed the gap model and subsequent circular instrument were designed to identify and measure the gap between customer expectation and perception of the service received. Service quality from the consumer perspective depend on the direction and degree of the difference between the expected service and the perceived services. So thus, comparing customer expected services with customer uh, तो इसमें perceived services hotel for example can be determined whether it is service standard is appropriate. So जो gap होता है between expectation and perception of performance determine the level of service quality from a customer's perspective. Though the circle instrument consists of the 22 statement for assessing consumer perception and expectations regarding the quality of services. Respondents are asked to rate their level of agreement and disagreement with the given statement. Consumer perception are based on the actual services they receive, and consumers' expectations are based on the past experiences. The statement represent the determinant of the dimension of service quality. The five dimension of service quality measured by the cervical instrument. सबसे पहला इसमें आता है tangibility. So since services are tangible, मतलब इसको हम टच कर सकते हैं, नहीं कर सकते. Customer derived their perception of service quality by tangible associated with the service provided. It is appearance of the physical facilities, equipment, personal and communication material. दूसरा आता है आपका reliability. It is the ability to perform. Tangibility was about reliability. So reliability is that customers wanted to do business with companies that provide. One second. So all companies need to be aware of the customer expectations of reliability. So the firms that do not provide the core services that customer think they have been buying fail the customer in the most direct way. फिर आता है responsiveness. It is a willingness to help customer and provide prompt services. Thus, dimension emphasis on attentiveness and the prompts in dealing with the customer request or question, complaint, and problem. Responsiveness is communicated to customers by length of time they have waited for assistance and answers to the question or attention to the problem. Responsiveness also captures the notion of flexibility and ability to customize the services to customer need. फिर आता है assurance. It means to inspire trust and confidence. Assurance is defined as employee knowledge of courtesy and the ability to the firm to and its employee to inspire trust and confidence. The dimension is likely to particularly important for the services that the customer perceives as involving high risk and about which they feel uncertain about the ability to evaluate. Trust and confidence may be embodied in the person who link customer to company. For example, marketing department, employees are aware of the importance to create trust already. फिर फिफ्थ आता है एम्पैथी जो कि लास्ट होता है. So empathy, it means to provide caring individual in attention to the firm provided its customer. In some countries, it is very essential to provide individual attentions to show customer the company does best to satisfy the needs. Empathy is an additional plan that the trust and the confidence of the customer at the same time, increasing the loyalty. In other competitive world, the customers required and rising day after day, and companies' duties their maximum. So this is the cervical model, right? So in order to summarize what we have studied, we have first studied about the operations management, that it is a critical functional of any organization. It is responsible for planning, coordinating, and controlling the resources needed to produce goods and services. Then we discussed about operations management aims to ensure that the organization operations are effective and efficient. To achieve this, operations manager must plan, organize, and oversee the resource. फिर भी आया product selection and design is a key operations management function in determining which product services that the company will offer its customer. The primary objective of material handling is to move materials from one location to another efficiently and effectively. The main objective of capacity planning is to ensure that company has the necessary resource to meet customer demand. Inventory control is the process of ensuring that inventory level are maintained at the optimum level. The objective of the inventory control are to ensure that the correct inventory level is maintained, stock is available when needed, and unnecessary stock is not held. And last is operation planning is setting goal and designing strategies to achieve goal. So that's all for this class. We have already, crossed 1 hour. Thank you. Have a great week ahead. We'll meet in the next class.